All right. Here we are, and welcome to another movie review stream. My name is Mark McPherson, film critic for movieswithmark.com, filminquiry.com, and TwinCitiesGeek.com. And it's the first week of April, and we've got a lot of big films that I have to cover, a few that we're catching up on, and a new one this week. Obviously, of course, the big one we're talking about today is the Super Mario Brothers movie, which is releasing in theaters tomorrow night. Or if you're willing to stay up for the midnight screening, it'll be out later tonight if you're going to wait for that. So that'll be out. We'll also talk about Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, the new fantasy adventure that just came out last weekend. And we'll be talking about the new anime Suzume, which is actually coming out not this week, but next week. So a little bit of everything here. There's a film from last week, there's a film this week, and a film that covering next week. So covering a little bit of everything. If you'd like to read any of the reviews, in particular, if you'd like to just, if you don't want to sit through my video review and just read what I have to say, you can check out my review over on movieswithmark.com. It's up there right now. Otherwise, there will be a review of the Super Mario Brothers movie on Film Inquiry tomorrow, if you'd like to look for it there. All right. So I suppose let's just skip the formalities. I'm sure that we got to get to the most highly anticipated movie right now, which is Suzume. No, I'm just kidding. Although a lot of people have been talking about Suzume, so a lot of big buzz on that. So yeah, we'll get to the big video game movie everyone's talking about, or everyone is talking about this week. We'll see how it plays out the next week. So. All right, so let me just get my notes up here, get a little coffeeed up here, and then we will jump right into the review. Get my notes up, my water, a little Scream 6 glass. I always love when they send me like silly stuff like that. I don't even realize, but I got it on. You've probably seen the background. There's a weird Scream hat. All right. In 3, 2, 1. So the Super Mario Brothers movie is an animated adaptation of the popular video game series. Now, I'm sure that like the immediate question that everyone is going to be asking with this is this film better than the 1993 live-action Super Mario Brothers movie? And the answer almost by like default would be like, yes. I mean, it's not going to be much of a shocker to tell everyone that, yes, this film is better than the 1993 film. Like, unless this animated film was, just an unfocused mess and no one could decide on what it wanted to be, and it just kind of like garbled all the translations of adapting the video game onto the big screen, then yeah, it's pretty much by default this is going to be better. That being said, and this is something that I've been saying, like I said this like 3 years ago when I was talking about video game movies, which is that, this is a Mario movie that, yeah, Nintendo is being involved with it, but it's also being made by Illumination, which is a studio that's done Despicable Me, Minions, The Secret Life of Pets, The Grinch, and yeah, just a whole lot of meh animated films that haven't really done that much. And honestly, at least to me, they come up more like just like patchworks of good ideas that never culminate into like a great cohesive film. It always just feels like little vignettes and segments that are just kind of like stitched together in a patchwork. And unfortunately, that's what kind of the Super Mario Brothers movie ends up being. It just kind of ends up being the same Illumination formula, but coated in the Nintendo and the Mario glaze, even more so than that. And it's kind of depressing just because, like, this could have been a real game changer for Illumination. Like, this could have been their chance to break from the mold. They could have brought in, an entirely new audience, because, like, let's face it, like with stuff like, like Despicable Me and Minions, it's those films, like they seem like they're more appealing to like middle-aged people, just because like with their last film with, what was it, Minions: The Rise of Gru, there was a life insurance ad that was associated with it, so it's clearly targeted for older people. You'd think that, okay, like Mario has like a lot of history, you can bring the older people, that, a lot of kids are still into Mario. It's a huge it's like Pokemon and Ninja Turtles, like the kids will always be into it to a certain degree. So there's a chance here, and I think what makes it sad is like it has all the ingredients to make a good film and has like a decent setup, and then never kind of rolls with it to make it pay off. And I think a primary problem that I have with it is mostly just like how little they want to develop the characters within this 90-minute movie. and like I said, they start off well. Like you start off with Mario, voiced by Chris Pratt, and thankfully Pratt doesn't. He kind of like eases into the voice. This is kind of the one thing that I do like about Illumination films is that usually when they cast some voice actors, they tend to cast them in roles that you wouldn't think. Like there's a few roles I'll get to here where it's like I had to look at the credits because I did not expect that voice to come out of that actor. But Pratt's voice, you get used to it after a while. It just kind of feels like Pratt kind of trying to do like kind of like a put an Italian accent on it, but not as heavy as like Charles Martinet with like, you know, the upbeat voice. You kind of get used to it after a while. So anyway, Mario is established as this as a character who wants to fulfill his dreams of having a plumbing business, but feels like he's not living up to his family and that he might let down his brother Luigi, voiced by Charlie Day. And there's a good setup there. Like Mario he has dreams, he has motivations, and he has a desire to prove himself. Great, you have a decent foundation set up within like the first few minutes. But then once the film transitions from like a very stylish Brooklyn and then into like the fantasy world of like Bowser's Badlands and the Mushroom Kingdom, the film kind of loses this focus from the characters. And it's not just because and it's not just because like there's so much going on. There is, but the other problem is that there's too many other characters fighting for the screen. And they all have their own little motivations, or at least like tiny bits of it that don't really pay off as well. Like you have Bowser, played by Jack Black, and he basically wants power. He either wants power over all the kingdoms, or he wants to marry Princess Peach. It's kind of like one or the other. So basically, standard Bowser stuff. And then you have Princess Peach, voiced by Anya Taylor-Joy, and she is. And she starts with like an interesting origin. Like they reveal like how she got to Mushroom Kingdom and her perceptions of the outside world. Like I said, great foundation. Do not expect it to pay off in the rest of the film. Even like secondary characters have like good setups and then never pay off. Like Toad is very determined to prove himself. He's voiced by Keegan-Michael Key, which that's one of those voices you would not know unless you looked it up. So, yeah, Toad has motivation, which is never really explained. Donkey Kong, voiced by Seth Rogen, has daddy issues, but they're never really that present. Like, you can see a little bit of it, but the fact that the film kind of wants to kind of stress, like, this is Donkey Kong's problem that he's got to get over, almost comes off as inexplicable. It's like, okay, that's a decent arc for him, but there's no room left to explore it because everything else in this film, which is mostly just like these great like frenetic action sequences meant to reflect the video games, are neat to look at, but they crowd the screen so much that the characters either their arcs either do one of two things. They either just peter out and they forget about them, like with Peach, or they just kind of bookend them. Like they set them up and then they just resolve without any of like the middle room. Specifically with Mario's whole arc. There's little bits and pieces that show like his underdog element to improve as the film goes on, but it's very small. It's just because there's all this other eccentric stuff happening, like Mario traveling through pipes and then fighting Donkey Kong, and then you have the Mario Kart sequence and then the big battle with Bowser and power-ups and just all these references to the video games. Which is another, like, I think this film's like only it's 93 minutes and it's overstuffed with like every Mario and Nintendo reference you can think of. Like, I think if I remember correctly, within like the first 3 minutes of the film, there's references to like the Super Mario Brothers Super Show cartoon, Wrecking Crew, GameCube, and Charles Martinet's voice within just a few minutes of each other. Just bam, bam, bam. And it keeps going that way throughout. It's just like, here's these characters from the game. Here's this musical score that you remember from the games. Here's this level. Here's like this platforming element. Here's these mechanics you remember from the game. Here's this power up. Here's this little quirk. Here's this side character. Here's, how the mechanics of fire flowers work. And it just keeps going on and on and on to the point where it's just like, you can clearly see like the commercial strings being pulled here, where, to the point where I would say like this film doesn't have as much in common with like the 1993 Super Mario Brothers film as it does with the with the other Nintendo film, The Wizard, which came a little bit before the Mario Brothers movie. For those who don't remember, The Wizard was a film all about a video game tournament, and it was more or less just an excuse to push Nintendo products like, like the Power Glove and the upcoming Super Mario Brothers 3. And this film is the animated film feels like it's very much in that same mindset. It's just not as like vocal about pushing the products, even though it's pushing like a lot of nostalgia on the audience. It just keeps piling on and on and on to the point where it's like, I feel like I have to qualify and like, in case it's not clear, I didn't really enjoy the film. But if you are a Mario fan and your only stipulations for this film is that it's not as bad as the 1993 film, and that it references a lot of the games and rewards all your trivia so that you'll point at the screen and find every little thing in the background and every little reference that gets thrown out there, you'll probably enjoy the film on that level. On that level, sure. Like, if that's all that certain Mario fans want out of the film, then they will love it. But if you're hoping that there's going to be like some decent chemistry between the characters and some arcs, which they set up, you're going to be disappointed in this film, especially because, and the thing is, like, I almost feel like the film didn't have to have this kind of writing if they're not going to make it pay off, because I understand that, like, like the whole deal with like the Mario games is that they haven't had much of a plot, and it's more been about like the aesthetic and the spirit of just, like the playfulness of Mario and his colorful worlds. And a little bit of that comes through in the film. It's just the way that it sets up its characters, adds all this stuff. Where it's like, okay, like if you're not going to do anything with like the origins of Princess Peach, why even bring it up? And if you're not really going to develop like the other characters like Toad and Mario and Luigi, why even set them up with like these arcs if they're not going to pay off all that well, which is a real downer for this film, because like it looks good. I mean, the most positive praise I can say for the film is that it looks amazing. After like the Sonic movie where they showed his like distant world, they're always just like empty and garish, and there's like nothing all that much going on. And here, like the Mushroom Kingdom, it's got a lot of detail. It's got lots of, the little Toadstool characters running about, little like merchants, all these little in-jokes here and there. Like it feels alive. It's got a great color palette. I especially loved the sequences in Bowser's Badlands, which do feel truly terrifying. Like the sequence they introduced it with Luigi, it feels like a horror movie. It's like, that's, in terms of like the tone for like a few scenes, they're great. It's just that, like my similar criticism with the other Illumination movies is that it's still like it's diced up. It's like, okay, here's a neat little scene where you get to take in a cityscape. Here's a little bit of like a horror movie aspect. Here's kind of like a gladiatorial arena sequence, but they never really connect to the point where it's just like it's inexplicable when they get to the next scene. Like when they get to the Mario Kart sequence, it's more or less just like, oh, we're gonna go with go-karts. There's not a whole heavy amount of like rhyme or reason to it. We're just going to the go-kart sequence, which you've seen the trailers, you know what you're coming for. So the other thing I gotta stress too is like for Nintendo fans who are just coming in to see a Mario film and they're not as familiar with Illumination, they're going to be for a rude surprise, and not just because of the Illumination logo that features like the little yellow minion character who like screams Illumination at the beginning of every film. Because like I get the feeling it's going to be a rude awakening. You're going to get all these Nintendo fans, like these older Nintendo fans in there, and then they're going to realize right when it starts, oh wait, this is Illumination, isn't it? This is the Despicable Me people. And yes, and a lot of their hallmarks are still here. The one thing I gotta mention right away is that the music is a mixed bag, just because the orchestra bits that are scored for having like an orchestral version of like the familiar Mario music from the games, those are all nice to listen to, but for the majority of the action sequences in this film, they favor like it becomes a jukebox film. They pick out like the pop culture hits that you would want to play for that sequence. Like they play like the Kill Bill music during one of the fight scenes. During Mario's training montage. In fact, you know what? For the Mario training montage, I'm going to leave that up to you. Take a wild guess. Think about what is typically used in montage sequences in films. Take a guess what that song is, and I'll bet you'll be right when you go see this film. So yeah, and the thing is, like, that didn't. I don't mind it so much when, like, a film takes, like, that jukebox effect when they want to play some popular music, because if you do it well enough, it's fine. You know, I can appreciate a film, you know, trying to weave in a popular song and make it work. Was it the other Illumination films? Sing 2 actually did this pretty well, but it just comes off, like, especially when you have such a great score here, it just kind of comes off as like lazy. It's just like, how can we make this sequence more exciting? Well, what if we put in a pop culture song? That way it's more exciting and it's more referential, where, like, it feels like the adult crowd who's not as familiar with every Mario track will get into this. And it just it becomes so frustrating because there's so much is set up, and just it never pays off as well. Like, I kept waiting for, like, the film to take off with its characters and its chemistry and really get you excited to see Mario save the day and connect with all these characters, and flirt with Peach, and have an empathetic bond with Donkey Kong. All this great stuff that is set up, and it feels like it's not all there. Like, I get the feeling like this script was probably much longer and gave the characters much more time to be fleshed out and made them and give them, like, more personality so that they had a better back and forth. And it's just not here. So you're just getting kind of these characters who inexplicably have these issues and just kind of quickly get over them. Like, especially like with Donkey Kong, it's like Donkey Kong gets over his, like, it feels like his issues are not that big with his dad, and yet they are, but it never quite pays off. Also, a word of warning, if you were, like, I know I said that, like, you don't expect to see certain voice actors doing the work that they're kind of doing in this film, especially like Kevin Michael Richardson, who you might know. He's done voices on The Simpsons and Family Guy and American Dad. He usually has, like, that deep, recognizable voice that you can see in certain characters. And here he's playing Kamek, and I honestly didn't recognize his voice. And I thought that was kind of cool that Richardson, he's one of those voice actors who takes on so many roles and usually never rises to the top of a feature film. It was nice to see him kind of higher in the supporting cast in this film, especially with how much he gets to do. Fred Armisen, I kind of guessed that it was Fred Armisen, although, like, Fred usually kind of blends into his roles. But Seth Rogen, it's just Seth Rogen. It's just Seth Rogen playing Donkey Kong. So I'm going to, word of warning, if you don't like Seth Rogen's laugh, there's a lot of Seth Rogen's laugh in this film. Just to warn you on that. So, so yeah, like, I mean, like, I know, like, for Nintendo fans who really want a great Mario movie, and especially those who keep looking at video game films and keep thinking that, like, there's a video game curse that that films have got to get over, they're probably going to be really disappointed in this film. But I was just kind of, like, passively disappointed, just because, like, it's an Illumination film, and it pretty much did all the stuff I expected Illumination to do with Mario. And it's not so much that it makes a bad movie, it's just that it's a film that plays itself, like, it feels like, because this is, like, a cooperation with Nintendo and the creator, like, Shigeru Miyamoto, it feels like they're trying to be way too safe with Mario in this film, where it's like, where they're trying to have fun with the property, but not too much fun, where they point out that much of the absurdity. Like, occasionally there'll be, like, a character who'll say, like, oh, this looks silly, or this looks a little dumb. But other than that, everything is just kind of, it feels like walking through someone's house where everything is just covered in plastic and they want to preserve it. And it's like, like, watching the movies, like, oh, look at these, these types of characters. Can we do some fun with them? No, those are sacred Nintendo characters. You can't have any fun with them. Don't do anything. And it felt like that throughout, where it's just like, you have, like, gentle fun with the characters, but you never embrace that much of the absurdity, where it feels like there's this playful nature with the Nintendo brand here. It just it's far too safe with this material that you're begging for the film to just try something, anything, shake it up a little bit, instead of just giving me these sequences that look good but feel weightless because you're not as invested in the characters beyond just their broad strokes of like characterization, and then just like tapping the celebrity voice actor onto them. Which, like I said, like all the ingredients are here. Like the characters look the way they do in the games. They more or less behave kind of the way you would expect them to in the video games. All the references are there, where fans who only pay attention to that will be pleased. But in terms of the whole film coming together as a whole, it's just not there. And as a result, you just end up with this kind of just this good looking, but like lukewarm narrative upon just like nothing but Nintendo citations, to the point where it felt like I was watching The Wizard again, just seeing like a big Nintendo commercial, which is pointing out the brand, trying to have fun with it, but never really taking off with the material. And it just doesn't make a good movie. So yeah, it's sadly not a good film. I wish it were, and like I said, I talked about this 3 years ago, where it's like, it'll probably end up being this, and I hope I'm wrong, and it turns out I was right, and I'm not that enthused about it, because I want to be proven. I don't want it to be the same. The biggest surprise for me would be if the film was not like an Illumination film. If it didn't feel like one, but it does throughout. It constantly reminds you who made this film, why they're making it, and yeah. So yeah, Super Mario Brothers will be in theaters tomorrow. That's right, this Wednesday. They moved it up. It was originally Friday, and then they moved it up to Wednesday because of spring break. And there will be like midnight screenings tonight. And I want to make this clear, like, because I feel like I shouldn't have to do this. This should be like boilerplate, but to all of the Mario and Nintendo fans who are seeing my negative review, and this film has been getting a lot of negative reviews. Like the review embargo was lifted at 2:00 today, and a lot of negative reviews. I just want to say for all the fans, if you're just seeking like a decent Mario film and that it's going to reference all the video games, you're fine. You're probably going to like it. You'll probably love it, in fact, for that. I'm just saying, like, if you're seeking anything more, you're going to be disappointed. So just like the caveat there, like, I recognize that Mario fans who have done all their homework, who have studied all the games, studied all the references, get all the in-jokes, they'll probably like it on that level. So just need to make it a qualifier. Also, I'm very much aware that this film is going to make a lot of money. Like, a lot of people, like, this always happens when, like, fans see that a film is not getting good reviews. They always, like, fire back saying, like, oh, what do critics know? Or, oh, this film's going to make a lot of money. It's obviously going to make a lot of money. It's an Illumination film. They always make money. It's an animated family film. Those usually do really well and make money. And it's based on the most popular video game franchise in the world. It's obviously going to make a lot of money. That's not like someone said, like, mark my words, it's going to make yeah, every analyst is saying it's going to make money. It's, I think it's projected somewhere like between like 80 and 90 million for its opening, which is really good, really good. So it'll do fine. You don't need to worry about, a property this big from a studio this big failing at the box office from so many devoted people. It's going to do fine. So relax. I'm not coming after your Mario movie. You can go watch it. I'm not your dad. I'm just saying, temper your expectations, all right? Words of advice. All right. Now let's get into something more fun, huh? Oh, there we go. All right. Let's see. Let's get to some Dungeons and Dragons. Film I'm actually excited to talk about. Probably won't get much backlash for this one, too. Okay. get my notes up here, and 3, 2, 1. So Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, kind of takes the Guardians of the Galaxy route to the Dungeons and Dragons franchise, and which basically is to say that like it feels like it's being playful with the material, but also like goofing on it when you need to. In other words, making a serviceable enough film that will get people interested in Dungeons and Dragons while still rewarding the fans for like picking up on all the little references. I gotta admit, I was I kind of didn't have any expectations for this. I'm just like, okay, you know, fantasy adventure, this could be fun. And it turns out it was a lot more fun than I expected. And then a huge part of that is deserved for, it should be reserved for the cast here. The casting is so wonderful, and everyone plays off here beautifully. You have Chris Pine playing Edwin, who is a rebellious bard who wanted to settle down, start a family, while at the same time, you know, infiltrating and stealing from people and going on fun quests and all that. But then his wife ends up murdered by a wizard, and he wants to get revenge while raising his daughter at the same time, and wants to find a way to basically bring his wife back from the dead. So he's got a bit of a noble quest here. You know, he's trying to preserve his family, and he's got and of course, you know, he's already got like a Fast and the Furious style family around him. That already cares for him. You got Michelle Rodriguez playing Holga, a barbarian who's very blunt. She occupies most of the action scenes and has like a lot of fun with her role, like especially how she comments on like the different weapons, how she, one sequence in particular, how she uses a bow without an arrow to attack someone is very, very clever. I loved every one of her fight sequences. You have Justice Smith as Simon, who is a half-elf wild mage. So a lot of fun with this kind of like plucky guy who's got self-esteem issues, who can conjure magic, but usually not the right magic for the right time, and has a lot of an internal struggle to get over with himself. And then perhaps one of the more iconic characters, you have Sophia Lillis playing Doric, a tiefling druid who can transform into an owl bear creature. And she has a distrust with humans that she's trying to get over as well. I should have mentioned Holga also has, like, she's trying to get over, breaking up with her ex. So they all have different things that they've got to get over, and they have, like, the perfect quest to do it on. They got to stop one of their older acquaintances, Forge, played by Hugh Grant, who just has so much fun in his film. I mean, it's Hugh Grant, like, you know, if you remember, like, his villain role in Paddington 2, he was having a lot of fun. And he's having a lot of fun here, playing just like this, you know, former rogue turned stuffy politician who works with evil people and just snickers and cackles his way through this, just makes like witty and snide remarks here and there, just having a ball, just loving it. And then, of course, we have the central villain in all this, Sophina, played by Daisy Head, who is a red wizard who has that perfect kind of like silent and sinister look to her, who just, you know, when she finally does, you know, reveal her true power, you know, she's a very terrifying force. So it starts off as a quest, you know, just for, you know, Egwin trying to, you know, save his wife and also his daughter at the same time. And then slowly turns into a quest to just save the entire land from dark spell of the undead that's going to destroy the land and infect all the people. So yeah, just kind of a fun heist film on that angle, but with magic, and the magic they used on the heist is very clever. They have like little portals that they try to like sneak into a vault through, by sneaking in like some artwork that has a portal behind it. Very clever stuff on that front. They have to navigate through an arena that has like terrifying creatures that can project holograms and a gelatinous cube that eats people. All this fun stuff that's loaded up onto the screen, but it never feels like it's like just like a nostalgic overload for like Dungeons and Dragons fans. Like, oh, here, remember this from the games, and here's here's like the specs on this weapon and this material. It never gets to like that nerdy, like geeky route with like Dungeons and Dragons, but still acknowledges like a bit of it like here and there. Like I'm like I'll admit I'm not as up on Dungeons and Dragons. I haven't played it in years. But I have played a lot of like Baldur's Gate. So when they brought up Baldur's Gate at one point, it's like, oh yay, my favorite PC game. So yeah, and I think the important thing is like you don't have to be a fan to appreciate it, mostly just because this script has a lot of fun kind of pointing out the absurdities of this world, like where they try to reason like, why don't you just magic everything away? And it's like you can't do that. And then like they'll have like a silly bit where it's like, well, yeah, I guess we could do that. So yeah, just like a very knowing nature to this material where they can still tell like an epic fantasy adventure, but still find all like the fun and quirky parts to have fun with. Like at one point, in order to get past like this magical spell that's guarding like the ancient relic they need, they have to seek out this magic helmet, and the only way to find it is if they can talk to the dead soldiers of a battle that was like, you know, decades ago. And the only way they can talk to them is if they raise them from the dead. And this leads to some funny stuff where, like, you know, they can raise them up from the dead. They can only ask them a few questions, and they might ask too many or they might ask too little. And they just kind of got to add, like, filler questions. And sometimes they dig up the wrong grave, they get the wrong person, and they realize this person died in an embarrassing way. Just so much fun stuff you can do in that scene. And it feels like the directors really went out of their way to make those scenes a lot more fun than just being just kind of like that dreary bit that you go through within like a fantasy film. So and again, like I said, a lot of that has to do with the actors here. One actor who I really love was Reggie Jean Page, who plays a paladin called Zank, he's kind of like, he's a little bit like a smart version of Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy, if that makes any sense. Like he takes everything very literal, but he's also like incredibly intelligent and weaves amazing spells. So it's like he won't pick up on euphemisms and stuff like that, but he's also like very smart and clever and powerful, and he has just this dry wit about him that's just so adorable that like I wished he would have like he's only in one segment of the film, but he eats that scene up with a spoon that just, you want him to come back. At some point you do. You just like, I kept hoping like, you know, maybe in like a post-credits scene, like just that he'd come back. It's just something like that, just because he was so good. And again, like, because everyone is good in this. There's even a few like surprises. Like I didn't expect Holga's ex to be played by Bradley Cooper, who's like a little short halfling, which further makes you think of like, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy, because the character he played in that. But yeah, it's just it's a fantasy film that doesn't feel like it has to be stuck in its own lore, because like so many like fantasy films will get stuck in like, you know, just this by divulging, or like, you know, long ago this happened and such, and you've got to like get through all this exposition. They do reveal like a lot of the lore behind this story, but they also find fun ways to like dole it out. Like they have some like some great transitions for it. They dice it up within the story. Like in particular, I love the fact that we start hearing about Egwene's story when he's in prison trying to make his case to get out of prison. So you have a great setup there. And also, like, I love how they keep dashing back and forth into the present with how like Chris Pine's character just keeps telling his story, but tries to like interrupt it here and there and kind of like have fun and kind of like bide his time with the trial. So just so many great little elements like that just come together so well that I think the film is about like 2.5 hours, and it just breezes by just because it's so much fun just occupying this world, being with these characters and being along on them with this imaginative and creative heist using this world. That being said, the one negative thing I will say about this film is that not all the arcs pay off as well as I'd like to see them to. In particular, I think this is most evident with Simon and Doric, mostly because like Simon has an interesting, you know, dilemma. Like he's got to get over his fear of not matching up to his past and his family and being a powerful mage. And it feels like most of that gets resolved kind of off screen and then inexplicably. Like at one point, like he's speaking to like the spirits of his ancestors, trying to like reason with them, like, you know, like I'm doing the best that I can, and eventually comes to the realization that, you know, he has to find the power within himself. Doric's story kind of like it kind of like meshes too much into the background where you don't really feel she's made a huge change. Like she's been portrayed by humans, so she's got to learn to trust them again. And it mostly kind of comes through in the arena, but mostly I guess the one thing I can appreciate about Doric is that her change feels like it doesn't involve much dialogue. Like she doesn't have to speak much. She just needs like a dire situation where she has to prove herself and work alongside her team and build up some trust in them, but also like make sure that they can trust her as well. And there's a decent drive up to that point, but she mostly kind of seems sidelined for it. Holga almost feels like entirely sidelined after we get past like her ex, and then it just kind of becomes I hate keep coming back to it, but it does kind of feel like Fast and the Furious, where it's just like, you know, it's the family. This is our new family. But that's not a bad thing, because, you know, the Fast and the Furious films are fun, and this film is fun as well, and it actually has a lot of charisma and character to it. There's a lot of like fun sequences with the visual effects. I love the fact that when they do actually get to the dungeon where they've got to steal like a magical artifact, they have to go through this dungeon that has this tubby dragon just rolling all over the place and smacking into stuff and just just belching out whatever little fire it can here and there. And it's just like it's so weird, but also like playfully weird. It's like, you know what, this is fun. This is a bunch of adventurers running through a crumbling dungeon, and there's zombies chasing after them, but there's also this fat dragon who's breaking everything in its path. This is fun. Like at about like the halfway point, you're just like, I'm in this. I'm with this all the way. I want to see what Hugh Grant does. I want to see what the evil red wizards do. I want to like see all the cool magical powers come into play. I want to see Chris Pine smack a wizard with the bard's musical instrument, and he does, and it's absolutely hilarious, and I love it. I love every little bit of this film. Where it's been a while since I've seen like the 2000s Dungeons and Dragons film, but I remember it not being very good, and I'm pretty sure if I rewatched it, I'd probably still have that thought, despite how much I love Jeremy Irons. But yeah, this is just like it's a genuine thrill. Like, you know, honestly, I think, you know, maybe this is speculative, but I feel like it's going to get a lot more people into D&D, especially like the younger crowd who gravitates towards this film, which it's been doing fairly well. So yeah, I adored this film, and it's absolute blast. Oh, the other thing I gotta mention is the sequence where they try to make a magical projection of Chris Pine almost had me rolling on the floor with just like the silly stuff that they do with it. Just so much great. It's a fun fantasy heist film, and I don't know any better way to explain it than that. Other than that, it feels like a Guardians of the Galaxy treatment for Dungeons and Dragons. That's probably the best way to sell it. Considering how many people took a shot on Guardians of the Galaxy and absolutely loved it, I feel like that same audience will have just as much fun with Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. And it's currently playing in theaters right now. You're probably going to want to check out it soon, because like the Mario movie is probably going to take up a whole bunch of theaters. Well, I mean, it's probably already going to be taking up theaters tomorrow anyway, so. But if you want to catch it soon, I believe it's through Paramount, right? So you could probably watch it on Paramount Plus. Yeah, it's through Paramount. So it will probably be on Paramount Plus later this year if you would like to see it there. And also, I don't know how well Mario will do that. I'm sure it's going to do really well. It's just like, I don't know if Universal is going to push it onto Peacock. Probably not until like very late in the game. So, like, and by late in the game, I mean like, you know, like maybe a few weeks before it hits home video, if at all. They might just let it go to home video if it ends up being that popular. So we'll see. And finally, our final film of the stream, we're going to review another animated film. So why not? Okay. Kodoshinka. Alright, let me get my notes up here. Alrighty. And for those who are wondering, this film is coming out in theaters next week. Next week is when Suzume is coming to your local cinema. I don't know if it's going to be that wide a release. It's a Crunchyroll release. And those usually get pretty good spread. Oh no, wait, it's not Crunchyroll. No, it's not Crunchyroll. It's G Kids. Ooh, then you really got to check it out. If it's G Kids, then you really got to go looking for it, you know? Because it'll be gone soon enough. Because also, like, we're coming up on Ghibli Fest, too, so, oof. Tough time to get a film in mainstream theaters, you know? Okay. Alright. Okay. Let's get the cast here. Okay. And in 3, 2, 1. So, Suzume is an anime film from the director of Your Name. And it's very much in that same vein of that type of film where it's, it exists in the modern day. It involves, young people trying to save the day and discovering magical elements right in their backyard. And, despite how many films we've gotten like that are along that same range, especially from director Makoto Shinkai, I have to admit they still kind of work on me. They still make me feel something. They still make me interested to see where they go. Maybe it's just because they look lavish, like they make these astoundingly looking like settings and characters and have all these little details that just gross you in its world. Maybe it's because it has like little, I don't know, kind of like little like relatable slice of life elements woven in with its, kind of like low and contemporary fantasy elements. But it still works on me. So the premise of this one is that Suzume Iwano is a high school student who has a little bit of trauma from her past. She's lost her mother, and she feels like she's been somewhere else before within a dream. And then one day, she notices something odd at the ruins amid her, her Japanese home. She ventures there and she finds a door just inexplicably there out of nowhere. And she finds that if she walks through it, she can go to a different place, but then finds out that dangerous stuff comes out of the door. This weird, like, worm-type creature of, like, black and red just comes out of the door and tries to attack her. And coming to her rescue is, what's his name? Like Soda, I think? I believe his name is, Soda, wasn't it? I just, you have to consult my notes here for a minute. But yeah, she finds like this mysterious stranger, called Soda. And Soda is basically, like that handsome, guy who knows all about the magical world and kind of fills her in on his job, which is basically to close doors in her world. There's another world beyond hers that has dangerous elements that leak out onto Earth and cause all manner of disaster and death and panic. And it's up to Soda to close these doors, and Suzume helps him at that point. And so she takes an interest in him and finds that she needs to actually help him more since another spirit in the form of a cat has kind of targeted Soda with a curse. And it's a curse, and stick with me here, it's a curse that transforms him into into Suzume's childhood chair. And he remains that way throughout most of the film. So the majority of the film is just Suzume wandering around Japan with her little chair buddy, shutting magical doors and keeping a giant, disastrous worm creature from entering into our world. And it sounds like a silly premise, and don't worry, like they do recognize the absurdity of it. But it's also it also manages to be a touching one. And I think that's that's like a great feat for a film like this. If a film can make you care that much about a teenage girl falling in love with a chair, I think that's a good feat. And I think it sells it well just because like the chair obviously has a bigger attachment to, you know, her history with her mother, and forming like a bridge back to her past and coming to terms with her trauma and trying to live more for the next day instead of like worrying about the past. And ultimately, and ultimately, like, I think like Suzume comes to terms with a bit of an existential crisis that befalls her when trying to contemplate another world and losing someone to the void, especially when Sota feels like he might be the next spirit who goes off into the great beyond. And more or less what the film is all about is basically trying to find some will to live amid all the disaster and keep pushing back, keep trying to, you know, protect people and be with people and give them a good life and shut as many doors of disaster when you can, if you can. Which happens to be pretty dangerous. Like one of the doors is on like a Ferris wheel, so so it gets pretty intense at times. But there's also a lot of like great little cute asides in this film. Like you get to see Suzume hang out at a bar. You get to see her on a train. You get to when I say hang out at a bar, I mean she works at a bar. She befriends some children who find a lot of fun stuff that they can do with the little chair, especially since it's a chair clearly made for like kids who are like 3 to 4 years old. So of course the kids are gonna have some fun with it. So and yeah, just all the fun characters that she meets. Like she meets a cheapskate who knows Sota, who's basically like looking for some money, and he has a car that doesn't quite work. You have Suzume's aunt, who is desperately trying to seek her and trying to be more of a motherly figure, but is just struggling because like she hates that she's been placed with this burden of Suzume. So there's a lot of baggage that they have to unpack throughout the film, which they do just beautifully. Like there's a, like, I'll say this, if you like the scene in Everything Everywhere All at Once where the characters just almost kind of like scream at each other and get everything out in the open and then try to repair themselves with like all like the resentment that they've been feeling, you get a few great scenes like that in Suzume, and they're so like they're so emotionally moving, and just like they touch on something that you'd want to see like an anime film do like this. Like, 'cause that's one of like the interesting things about like having like anime like this is that you can tap into stuff that, you know, you wouldn't get to as much like with like Western animation stuff, like, you know, Pixar and DreamWorks. It feels like you always have to couch it within something a little bit more fantastical to appeal to a younger audience. And here it's very much like exactly like with Your Name. It's made relatable by depicting a, you know, like a believable modern world and then placing this fantasy on top of it while giving characters something to learn. And much like Your Name, this is a gorgeous film. Everything, the scenes of like her traveling on a ferry and, you know, her hanging out at like the nightclub, and just the little like natural environments, and just like the rain and like the beautiful cityscapes, and just the detail in the water, just all of it just looks gorgeous. Where like, and it's never like treated as like, okay, here's this shot where you got to appreciate the beauty. Here's where a character has to stare in awe. It's just there. And and I love how it's just kind of treated as like, almost like casually with the filmmaking, where it just kind of catches you off guard. Where like the scene where Suzume and Sota are chasing after the cat that they've got to track down. Once they get onto the ferry, it's like, oh great, we got to sit on the ferry, and then we gotta wait till we get to land and find out where this cat got to. And then it cuts to this wide shot of like the two ferries and the sky reflecting off the waters and the detail in the ship. And just, oh, it blows your mind each time you see it. It's gorgeous. And I guess like the way to judge this film is like you can't quite look at it like most anime films, like, because it feels like you got to compare it to like the other stuff, like Your Name and The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, and what are some other, like A Silent Voice, and all these other kind of like, you know, coming of age teenage anime that have these very like fantastical but also kind of almost kind of very essentially low fantasy with very much relatable elements um and very very poignant personalities that come about in there. I feel like, on that level, I would say that Suzume is not as good as Your Name, but only slightly. Like it's narrowly there. I guess like I guess like the thing is like I feel like the film proceeds almost like too quickly to get to like its next cool fantastical sequence and its next emotional resolve, that it feels a little bit patchy in the first act. Like I was kind of getting like my worries was that it was kind of going to be like Howl's Moving Castle, where it's like it's a great setup, great world, great imagination, but doesn't really give you that much time to spend with the characters. But thankfully, by the second act, you get to learn a lot more about Suzume and Soda, and by that point, you're fully invested to see whether or not they can save Japan from like this big threat that's coming through all these doors. So you're invested very much in that adventure aspect, but also with the grander, existential problems of Suzume and coming to terms with herself, similar to like a lot of other anime in this genre. So if you like those types of films, especially, Your Name, which I know a lot of people loved, what can I say? That this is another banger from Makoto. So go check it out. So Suzume is going to be in theaters a few places. I think it's going to be in theaters a few places on April 14th. So next week. Let me double check the release date here. And let's see. Okay, so it's going to... Wow, it actually looks like it's going to have like a kind of an international release. Like Suzume, it looks like it's going to... Okay, if you're in France, Malta, or Switzerland, it's going to be on April 2nd. If you're in Australia, Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, basically all of South America, it's going to be on April 13th. Oh my god, as well as... Okay, a lot of parts of Europe. Basically, just about everywhere in the world is going to release on April 13th. And then April 14th, obviously, it's going to be in the US and a whole bunch of other places, like Norway and Africa. So, wow. Big release. And I guess I should also mention that, too, that I did not watch the English dub. I believe... And there is going to be an English dub for anyone who's wondering, but I believe the only copy I got was for the Japanese subtitled version, which is good. I love the voices. I mean, you'd expect the voice to be pretty good, native language and all. When usually English dubs, they get the same handful troupe of actors they usually get. So there you go. I guess another little thing that I should mention is that coming this Friday, I will be at Anime Detour, the anime convention in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and we will be doing a ton of panels there, as I always do every year, and it's a lot of fun. So and I'll probably end up talking about Suzume a little bit while I'm there as well, for promoting that film a bit. So yeah, if you're in the Minnesota area and you wanna, if you love anime, and you want to come chat with me about it, I will be at Anime Detour in Minneapolis. We'll be doing panels on film, Gundam. We'll be doing panels about Saturday morning cartoons, autism, gatekeeping, old school anime, physical media, which I'm looking forward to talking about because, well, all that. And we'll also be doing our traditional, the panel that I do every year, the horrors of anime, in which we show the weirdest anime that I can find. And this year I found a lot. I found a lot of bizarre new stuff, like what's it called? Like, there's some bizarre stuff like the search for Uranus and the old 8-man dub and what's that weird one? Gonad the Barbarian. All this bizarre stuff. So yeah, that'll all be at the convention this weekend. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. All right, so well, that was been about an hour. So let's play a little outro music here, and let's do a quick review of the reviews that we talked about on the show. So we reviewed the Super Mario Brothers movie, which was not very good, but it's an Illumination film that'll temper your expectations. It's not a complete train wreck like the 1993 live-action film, if that's what you're wondering, but it's not a whole lot else. It's mostly just kind of bland characterizations amid some decently looking animated sequences, and sadly, not much more than that, unfortunately. Too bad. Thankfully, though, Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves was an amazingly fun heist film that actually does have fun with the material and knows how to make it palatable for most audiences. That'll get them more interested in Dungeons & Dragons, hopefully. Great cast, great chemistry, whole lot of fun. Absolutely check out this film if you have not already. And then we reviewed Suzume, the upcoming anime by Makoto Shinkai. And it, similar to Your Name, it's another coming-of-age film with low fantasy and a bigger message to it, and just great storytelling and incredible animation. So more of the same from the guy you would expect, from what you would expect from the guy who made Your Name. So a great anime film that will be coming out next week. So yeah, so by this time tomorrow, Super Mario Brothers will be out, and between Super Mario and Dungeons & Dragons, I would say go see Dungeons & Dragons, especially since everyone will probably go seeing the Mario movie anyway, so take this time to get your ticket for that one, But then, yeah, next week, definitely go see Suzume as well. Well, that should about do it for this. If you'd like to actually read my reviews of these films, you can go over to movieswithmark.com and filminquiry.com and twincitiesgeek.com. The Mario review is currently up on movieswithmark.com, and another one will be up on filminquiry.com tomorrow. My goodness. So you can check that out there. Yeah, and if you like these reviews and you want to see more early reviews of the Mario movie and stuff like this, be sure to like and comment and algorithm boost and all that jazz, and subscribe. There's also a Patreon where I write about cartoons on there and also give access to videos ahead of time and other fun audio stuff that I'm doing through. I believe I'm going to put some of the panels up through Patreon just for like some of the stuff that I can't put on YouTube, so you can access it through there. So yeah, be sure to check out all that, and I will be back in 2 weeks where, oh my goodness, what do we have to cover? I know for sure in 2 weeks we will be covering Renfield, the new horror comedy that stars Nicholas Hoult as Renfield and Nicolas Cage as Dracula, which looks like a lot of fun. I can't wait for it. And I'm trying to think what else we got. We might be reviewing Beau is Afraid. I'm going to see if I can get an early one of that. But yeah, I probably should have had the list out in front of me to look at for the future films. But we will definitely be reviewing Renfield in 2 weeks. So yeah, I will see you then if I don't see you at Anime Detour this weekend. And yeah, so hope you enjoyed the stream, and yeah, I will catch you next time. See you later.